The frozen breath hung in the air like smoke. February in Toronto, -15 with the wind chill. And there was my daughter Kira walking along Kingston Road toward the Tim Hortons at 6 in the morning. Walking, not driving. Walking in scrubs that hung off her frame like she'd borrowed them from someone twice her size, her coat too thin for this weather, her hands shoved deep in her pockets. I almost didn't recognize her. My daughter, who'd graduated top of her class from the Ontario Veterinary College. My daughter, who'd married Eric Bergstrom 4 years ago in a beautiful ceremony at the Gildan Estate. My daughter, who drove a Honda CR-V I'd helped her purchase just 18 months ago and lived in a charming house in Oakville with a garden and a swing set for my 5-year-old granddaughter Lily. That daughter was now standing at the drive-through window, counting loonies and quarters in her palm, trying to figure out if she had enough for a small double-double. I pulled my car into the parking lot and got out. The cold hit me like a wall, but I barely felt it. All I could see was Kira, my baby girl, looking like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Kira?" She turned, and I saw it. The hollowed cheeks, the dark circles that makeup couldn't hide. The flash of something that looked almost like fear before she forced a smile. "Mom, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing." I walked up to her, my boots crunching on the salted pavement. "Why are you walking? Where's your car?" Her smile flickered. Eric needed it. His truck's been in the shop. "For how long?" She didn't answer, just turned back to the window and ordered her coffee. I watched her count out the exact change, right down to the last nickel. "Let me get that." I reached for my wallet. "No." Her voice came out sharp. "No, Mom. I've got it. It's fine. Everything's fine." But nothing about this was fine. Nothing about my daughter standing in a Tim Hortons parking lot in the bitter cold, wearing clothes that didn't fit, counting pennies for coffee, was anywhere close to fine. "Where's Lily?" "With Eric and his mother. Ingrid takes her to daycare on Tuesdays." "You're not working today?" "I am. I start at 8. I needed coffee first." "How are you getting to work?" "The bus. The 8-6 runs right past the clinic." The clinic. Not the animal hospital in Oakville where she'd been working for 3 years. Not the place where she'd been on track to become a partner. Which clinic? She took her coffee from the window and wrapped her hands around it like it was the only warmth she'd felt in days. "Mom, I really have to go. I'll miss the bus." "Kira Marie O'Sullivan." I used my full mother voice, the one that still worked even though she was 36 years old. "You're going to get in my car right now, and you're going to tell me what's going on." She stood there in the parking lot, steam rising from her coffee cup, and for a moment I thought she was going to refuse. Then something in her crumbled, just a little, just enough for me to see the cracks. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." We sat in my car with the heat blasting. I'd picked up breakfast sandwiches and another coffee for her, and I watched her eat like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in a long time. Fast, almost desperate, like she was afraid someone would take it away. "When did you last eat?" I asked. "I had dinner last night." "What did you have?" "Toast." "Toast." "It's fine, Mom. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've lost at least 20 pounds. You're taking the bus to work in February. You're counting coins for coffee. And you flinched when I said Eric's name." She set down her sandwich. Her hands were shaking. "It's complicated." Then uncomplicate it for me. The tears started then, quiet ones, running down her cheeks while she stared straight ahead through the windshield. "They have everything, Mom. Eric and Ingrid. They have my car, my bank accounts, my credit cards. They even have my veterinary license because Ingrid said she'd keep it somewhere safe after I accidentally left it in my scrubs and it went through the wash." She kept crying. "And if I try to leave, if I tell anyone, they'll take Lily. Ingrid has a lawyer ready. She's been documenting everything. Every time I work late, every time I'm too tired to play with Lily after a double shift, every time I forget something or make a mistake. She says I'm an unfit mother. She says no judge in Ontario would give me custody." I felt something cold settle in my chest, something that had nothing to do with the temperature outside. When did this start? 8 months ago. Eric lost his job at the engineering firm, or he said he did. I don't know what's true anymore. Ingrid convinced us to move in with her to save money. We rented out our house in Oakville. The money was supposed to go into a joint account to help us get back on our feet. She wiped her eyes roughly. But once we moved out, Eric had the locks changed. He said the house was in his name only, even though I'd been paying half the mortgage since we bought it. He rented it out for $4,000 a month. I never see that money. And your paychecks? Eric set up some kind of joint account. He said it was for our family, for Lily's future. But I can't access it. I can't see statements. Ingrid gives me $50 a week for expenses, and I have to account for every penny. If I spend more than that, she accuses me of stealing from the family. Where are you living in Ingrid's house? The basement. There's a storage room down there. Ingrid put in a cot and a space heater. She says it's temporary, just until I prove I can be responsible with money. But it's been 8 months, Mom. 8 months, and nothing's changed except it keeps getting worse. And Lily? Her bedroom is on the 2nd floor. I can only see her when Ingrid allows it, usually for an hour before bedtime if I'm home from work in time. Otherwise, Ingrid puts her to bed. She paused, and her voice dropped to a whisper. Last week, Lily asked me why I don't love her anymore. She said Grandma Ingrid told her I'd rather work than spend time with her. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Have you gone to the police? I tried. 3 months ago, I went to the station near my work and told them everything. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. The officer said it was a domestic matter. He said because Eric is my husband and I'd signed papers giving him access to the accounts, there wasn't much they could do. He told me to get a lawyer. And with what money, Mom? I can barely afford bus fare. Last month I was 10 cents short and had to walk 3 kilometers to work in the snow. Why didn't you call me? Because Ingrid monitors my phone. She checks my call log, my messages, everything. If she found out I'd talked to you about this, she'd use it against me. She'd say I was turning family against family, that I was unstable, that I was the problem. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. And I believed her, Mom. For a while, I believed her. She made me think this was all my fault, that I was bad with money, that I was a bad mother, that I was lucky they were willing to help me at all. That's not help. That's abuse. I know that now. But when you hear it every day, when they control everything, when you're so tired you can barely think straight, she trailed off. I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared that if I fight back, I'll lose Lily forever. And she's all I have. I sat there in that Tim Hortons parking lot with the engine running and the heat blasting, watching my daughter fall apart, and I made a decision. Listen to me very carefully. I kept my voice calm, controlled. I need you to go to work today. Act normal. Don't tell Eric or Ingrid about this conversation. When they check your phone, they'll see a 2-minute call to me. If they ask, tell them I called to say hello and you said you were busy. Can you do that? She nodded slowly. Why? Because I'm going to fix this. Mom, you can't. Kira. I waited until she looked at me. I was a forensic accountant for the Canadian Revenue Agency for 31 years. Do you know what I did every single day? She shook her head. I found people who thought they were smarter than the system. People who hid money, forged documents, manipulated accounts, cheated on their taxes. I tracked down fraud that other investigators had given up on. I testified in court cases that sent people to prison. I waited a beat, and I retired 5 years ago with a perfect record. Not a single case I worked on was ever overturned. I watched understanding dawn in her eyes. You think you can help? I don't think. I know. What Eric and Ingrid are doing isn't just cruel, sweetheart. It's illegal. Financial abuse, coercion, possibly fraud and forgery, depending on what documents you signed. And parental alienation is taken very seriously by family courts in Ontario. But Ingrid's lawyer? Ingrid has a lawyer because she knows what she's doing is wrong. She's preparing a defense before she even needs one. But defense only works if the other side doesn't have evidence. I squeezed her hand. I'm going to get evidence. Lots of it. And then we're going to get your life back. She grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. Mom, please be careful. Ingrid. She's not what she seems. Everyone thinks she's this sweet grandmotherly woman, but she's calculating. Everything she does is planned. Sweetheart. I smiled, and I could feel it wasn't a nice smile. So am I. I dropped Kira off at her work, a small veterinary clinic in Scarborough that was clearly several steps down from where she'd been before. I watched her walk inside in her oversized scrubs and her too-thin coat, and then I drove home and started making phone calls. The first was to Priya Sharma, a family lawyer I'd worked with on several fraud cases during my time at the CRA. She was sharp, she was thorough, and she didn't lose. Margaret, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I explained the situation. By the time I finished, I could hear her typing. This sounds like a clear pattern of coercive control. Ontario's been cracking down hard on this in recent years. If what you're telling me is accurate, your daughter has grounds for emergency custody, return of marital assets, and possibly criminal charges against both the husband and the mother-in-law. How fast can we move? That depends on how much evidence you can get me. Give me 2 weeks. The second call was to Marcus Thompson, a private investigator I'd recommended on several cases. He was former RCMP, meticulous, and had a gift for surveillance. Marcus, I need your eyes on a situation. What are we looking at? Financial abuse, coercion, possible fraud, a mother-in-law who's running the show, and a husband who's either complicit or controlled. My daughter's the victim. Family case. Those are always the hardest, which is why I need someone I trust. He was quiet for a moment. Where do you need me? Mississauga. I'll send you the address. I need documentation of living conditions, any evidence of the mother-in-law making statements to alienate my granddaughter, and anything that shows how they're treating my daughter. I'll start tomorrow. The third call was to an old colleague who now worked in real estate title searches. By the end of our conversation, I had an appointment to pull the records on the house in Oakville and find out exactly whose name was on that deed. That evening, I drove to Mississauga, to Ingrid Bargström's house. It was a large home in a respectable neighborhood, white brick with black shutters and a perfectly manicured lawn despite the snow. A Mercedes SUV sat in the driveway next to my daughter's Honda CR-V. Through the front windows, I could see the warm glow of lights, the flicker of a television. I parked down the street and waited. At 7:30, I saw Lily through an upstairs window. My granddaughter, with her blonde curls and her father's blue eyes, being tucked into bed by someone who wasn't her mother. At 8:15, Kira came home. I watched her walk up the driveway, her shoulders hunched against the cold, and go around to the side of the house, not through the front door, around the back, to what I assumed was the basement entrance. At 8:45, I got out of my car and walked along the back of the property, keeping to the shadows. The basement had a small window, half buried in snow. I crouched down and looked inside. My daughter was sitting on a cot in a room that couldn't have been more than 8 feet by 10, concrete floor, exposed pipes along the ceiling, a small space heater that looked like it barely put out any warmth, a plastic storage bin that probably held her clothes, a card table with a microwave and a kettle. This was where my brilliant daughter, who'd worked her whole life to build something, was living. Like she was nothing, like she was worthless. I took pictures, video. I documented the timestamp, the conditions, everything. Then I went home and started building my case. The next 2 weeks were busy. Marcus Thompson got footage of Ingrid going through Kira's belongings in the basement, audio of her telling Lily that Mommy was too busy working to spend time with her. A recording of her telling Eric that Kira would never be able to afford a lawyer, so they had nothing to worry about. The title search revealed what I'd suspected. The house in Oakville was in both Kira and Eric's names. Kira's parents, my husband David and I, had given them a gift of $100,000 for the down payment when they bought it. The mortgage had been co-signed by Kira, and yet Eric had been collecting rent on it for 8 months without giving her a cent. The bank records, obtained through official channels with Kira's written permission, showed a pattern that made my blood boil. Eric had systematically removed Kira from every joint account. Her paychecks were deposited into an account she couldn't access. Her name had been taken off their credit cards, and there were several documents that appeared to bear her signature but that Kira swore she'd never signed. I had a handwriting expert examine them. 2 of the signatures were clear forgeries. At the end of 2 weeks, I met with Priya Sharma and laid everything out on her conference table. The photos, the videos, the audio recordings, the bank records, the forged documents, the title search, the rental income. Priya looked through it all with an expression I'd seen on her face before, the expression of a lawyer who knows she's about to win. "Margaret," she said finally, "this is one of the most comprehensive cases of coercive control and financial abuse I've seen in 15 years of practice. What can we do? We can file for emergency custody today. We can get a court order for return of marital assets by the end of the week, and we can refer this to the Crown for criminal charges." Criminal charges? Fraud, forgery, and the coercive control provisions under the Divorce Act. Eric and his mother could both face prosecution. Good. She looked at me. Most families prefer to handle these things quietly. Civil settlements, no publicity. I thought about Kira counting coins for coffee, about Lily being told her mother didn't love her, about that concrete room in the basement where my daughter had been living for 8 months. My family prefers justice. The following Friday, we went to court. I picked up Kira at 6 in the morning. She was wearing the only professional outfit she had left, a gray pantsuit that hung loose on her diminished frame. Her hands were shaking as she got in my car. "Mom, what if it doesn't work?" "It will work." "But Ingrid's lawyer has nothing." I pulled out of the parking lot. "We have everything. Trust me, sweetheart. After today, your life changes." At the courthouse, we met Priya in the lobby. She was carrying 2 thick folders and wearing the confident smile of someone who was about to demolish the opposition. "Ready?" she asked Kira. Kira took a deep breath. "Ready." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. On one side sat Priya, Kira, and me. On the other side sat Eric, Ingrid, and their lawyer, a young man who looked increasingly nervous as he leafed through the papers Priya had served him. Ingrid, I noticed, was exactly as Kira had described her. Perfectly put together, silver hair in an elegant bob, wearing a tasteful blazer and pearls, the picture of a respectable grandmother. She caught my eye and gave me a small, condescending smile. I didn't smile back. The judge entered, and we all rose. Judge Patricia Kwame, according to Priya, was known for her no-nonsense approach to family cases and her particular disdain for financial abuse. "We're here today for an emergency motion regarding custody and return of marital assets," the judge began. "Miss Sharma, you're representing the petitioner?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Present your case." Priya stood and walked to the front of the courtroom. She was calm, methodical, devastating. "Your Honor, my client has been subjected to 8 months of systematic financial abuse and coercive control by her husband and mother-in-law. They have taken her vehicle, her bank accounts, her credit cards, and her access to her own income. They have forged her signature on financial documents. They have collected rental income from marital property without her knowledge or consent. They have housed her in an unheated basement storage room while they live in comfort upstairs. And they have systematically alienated her 5-year-old daughter, telling the child that her mother doesn't love her. She placed the first folder in front of the judge. This folder contains bank records showing the systematic removal of my client from joint accounts, as well as the redirection of her salary to accounts she cannot access. This folder also contains expert analysis of 2 documents bearing my client's signature, confirming that those signatures are forgeries. The second folder. This contains photographs and video evidence of my client's living conditions. A concrete basement room with a cot, a space heater, and no bathroom access. This is where she has been forced to live for 8 months, while her husband, mother-in-law, and daughter reside in a 5-bedroom home upstairs. She pulled out a tablet. "And this, Your Honor, is video and audio evidence of the mother-in-law, Ingrid Bergstrom, telling my client's daughter that her mother doesn't love her. There are also recordings of Miss Bergstrom discussing their strategy to ensure my client cannot afford legal representation." She pressed play. Ingrid's voice filled the courtroom. "Lily, sweetheart, Mommy's working again. She's always working. She doesn't have time for you like Grandma does." And then another recording. "Don't worry about Kira. She can't afford a lawyer, she can barely afford the bus. By the time she figures out what to do, we'll have everything documented. Any judge will see she's unfit." The judge's expression hardened. She turned to Eric and Ingrid's lawyer. "Counsel, do your clients wish to respond to these allegations?" The young lawyer stood. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Your Honor, my clients maintain that they have been providing support for Miss O'Sullivan during a difficult financial period. The living arrangements were temporary." Temporary. Judge Kwame's voice was flat. "For 8 months, in a basement storage room. While your clients collected $4,000 a month in rental income from marital property, the rental income was intended for what, exactly? To be deposited in an account your female client cannot access? To pay for the home she is not permitted to live in?" He had no answer. "What about the forged signatures?" "My clients deny any wrongdoing." "You're denying forgery when I have expert analysis in front of me?" Ingrid stood up, her composure cracking for the first time. "This is ridiculous. We've done nothing but help her. She's unstable. She's Mrs. Bergstrom." The judge's voice cut through the courtroom like ice. "You will sit down, and you will not speak unless addressed." Ingrid sat. The judge reviewed the documents for several minutes. When she looked up, her expression was grim. "I've seen enough. I'm granting emergency custody of the minor child to the petitioner, effective immediately. I'm ordering the return of all marital assets, including the vehicle and access to all bank accounts. I'm ordering the respondent to vacate the marital property in Oakville within 72 hours so the petitioner may take possession. And I'm referring this case to the Crown for investigation of fraud, forgery, and coercive control." Eric went pale. Ingrid's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm issuing a restraining order prohibiting both respondents from contacting the petitioner or the minor child except through legal counsel. Mr. Bergstrom will have supervised visitation only, pending psychological evaluation and completion of a coercive control intervention program. Mrs. Bergstrom will have no visitation rights until such time as she can demonstrate she poses no risk of parental alienation." She closed the folder. "This court is adjourned." Kira was crying, shaking and crying and gripping my hand so hard it hurt. "Is it over?" "It's over." We had police escort us to Ingrid's house that afternoon. Kira was legally entitled to collect her belongings and, more importantly, her daughter. When we pulled up with 2 officers, Ingrid was standing on the porch with her arms crossed. Eric was nowhere to be seen. "This is harassment," Ingrid said as we approached. "I'm calling my lawyer." "Your lawyer has already been served with the court order." One of the officers held up the papers. "We're here to ensure a peaceful transfer of the minor child and Mrs. Bergstrom's belongings. This is my house. You can't just—" "Actually, ma'am, we can." The officer's voice was polite but firm. "The court order is very clear." We went inside. The house was exactly as I'd imagined, tastefully decorated, expensively furnished, everything in its proper place. The kind of house that looked perfect from the outside while hiding something rotten underneath. Lily was in the living room, watching television. When she saw Kira, her face lit up. "Mommy!" She ran to Kira, who dropped to her knees and caught her in her arms. "Hi, baby." "Hi, my sweet girl. Are you staying, Mommy? Are you staying here with me and Grandma?" "No, sweetheart." Kira's voice was thick with tears. "We're going home. Just you and me. To our real home." Lily looked confused, but Grandma said, "Grandma was wrong about some things, baby, but it's okay now. Everything's going to be okay." We packed Lily's belongings while Ingrid watched in stony silence. Then we went down to the basement to collect Kira's things. It didn't take long. 8 months of her life fit into 2 cardboard boxes. As we carried them out, Ingrid finally spoke. "You think you've won," she said to me quietly, "but Kira needs us. She can't manage on her own. She'll come crawling back." I stopped and turned to face her. "Mrs. Bergstrom," I said calmly, "my daughter is a veterinary surgeon who graduated at the top of her class. She managed perfectly well before your son came into her life, and she'll manage perfectly well after." What she doesn't need is a mother-in-law who treats her like property, and a husband who's too weak to stand up for his own wife. Ingrid's face twisted with rage. You have no idea what— Actually, I have a very good idea. I was a forensic accountant for 31 years. I spent my career finding people who thought they could get away with fraud and manipulation. You're not special, Mrs. Bergstrom. You're not even particularly clever. You're just cruel, and cruelty always loses in the end. I walked out without looking back. We drove to the house in Oakville as the sun was setting. The tenants had been given notice by the court and had already vacated. Kira had the keys. The house was cold and empty. The furniture was mostly gone, sold or stored, I didn't know which. But the bones were good. The hardwood floors, the big windows, the oak tree in the front yard that Lily had loved to climb. "Mommy, is this our house?" Lily asked. "This is our house, baby. Are we staying forever?" Forever and ever. That night, after Lily was asleep on an air mattress in what would become her bedroom again, Kira and I sat in the empty living room with takeaway coffee from Tim Hortons. "I keep waiting for them to call," she said, "for this to turn out to be a dream." "It's not a dream. It's real." She was quiet for a long moment. "I should have told you sooner. I should have called you the first month, the first week, the first day it started going wrong. But Ingrid was so convincing. She made me think I was the problem, that I was bad with money, bad at being a wife, bad at being a mother, and Eric just went along with everything she said. He let her do all of it. He was controlled, too," I said. "It doesn't excuse what he did, but people like Ingrid, they know how to manipulate everyone around them, even their own children. Do you think he'll change?" "I don't know, but that's not your problem anymore. Your problem now is taking care of yourself and Lily, getting back to the career you worked so hard for, building a life that belongs to you." She leaned against me, the way she used to when she was a little girl. "Thank you, Mom. Always, sweetheart. Always." 8 months later, Lily had her 6th birthday party in the backyard of the house in Oakville. The oak tree was full of late summer leaves, and we'd hung streamers from the branches. There were a dozen children from Lily's new school running around and playing while their parents chatted by the barbecue. Kira was different now, healthy. The weight was back, and so was the light in her eyes. She'd returned to her old animal hospital, where they'd welcomed her back with open arms, and she was on track to become a partner within the year. She smiled again, laughed again, was herself again. Eric had completed his intervention program and was seeing Lily for supervised visits twice a month. According to the supervisor, he was trying. Actually, trying to be a better father. Maybe one day he'd earn back some of Kira's trust. Maybe not. That was his journey to take. Ingrid had been charged with fraud and uttering forged documents. The criminal trial was scheduled for the fall. Regardless of the outcome, she was prohibited from contacting Kira or Lily, and she'd been dropped by most of her social circle once the details became public. The respectable grandmother image she'd cultivated so carefully was gone. As I watched Lily blow out her candles, surrounded by friends and laughter, Kira came to stand beside me. "What did you wish for when you were 6?" she asked. "Probably a pony." She laughed. "What about now?" "Now?" I looked at my daughter, healthy and strong and free. "I don't need to wish for anything. Everything I want is right here." Kira put her arm around me. "I've been thinking," she said, "about talking to someone, telling my story. There might be other women out there going through the same thing. Women who think they're alone, who think they can't get help." "That's a good idea." "I didn't know it was abuse, Mom. For the longest time, I thought I was just failing. I thought if I tried harder, did better, was better, somehow it would all work out. It took me months to realize that nothing I did would ever be enough because they didn't want me to succeed. They wanted control. That's how coercive control works. It makes you doubt yourself, makes you think you're the problem. If I'd known the signs, if someone had told me what to look for, then tell others, be that person." She nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I will." The party wound down as the afternoon faded into evening. Parents collected their children, presents were piled in the corner, and Lily ran around the yard in her princess crown, refusing to believe the day was really over. "Gamma!" She came running up to me, frosting on her face and joy in her eyes. "Gamma, can you stay for pizza?" "I think I can manage that." "And sleepover?" I looked at Kira, who smiled. "Sleepover it is." Lily cheered and ran off to tell her remaining friends the good news. Kira and I stood together in the golden light of the setting sun, watching her go. "She's happy," Kira said softly. "Really happy. I wasn't sure she would be, after everything." "Children are resilient," I said, "especially when they're loved. She's loved because of you. You fought for her when I couldn't fight for myself." "No." I shook my head. "I fought with you. There's a difference. You're the one who survived 8 months of abuse and kept going. You're the one who protected Lily as best you could under impossible circumstances. You're the one who trusted me enough to tell me the truth that morning at Tim Hortons. That took courage. It didn't feel like courage. It felt like desperation. Courage often does." We stood there together, mother and daughter, watching Lily play under the oak tree as the sky turned pink and gold. I thought about that February morning 8 months ago, the frozen breath in the air, my daughter walking in the cold, counting coins for coffee, the fear in her eyes. We'd come a long way since then, and we'd come home. If you or someone you know is experiencing financial abuse or coercive control, please know that you are not alone and it is not your fault. These are patterns of behavior designed to make you feel powerless, but help is available. In Canada, you can contact the Assaulted Women's Helpline at 1-866-863-0511 or visit sheltersafe.ca to find local resources. Trust yourself, trust your instincts, and remember that family is not about control. It's about love, respect, and standing together, especially when times are hard. You deserve better. We all do.